I get a lot of questions on the YouTube channel asking about how to camp or even bug out with animals or anybody who is less than capable of looking after their own needs. Now, in the past couple of years, I learned a lot about how to make animals camp comfortably with you and all of the things that you can do in order to settle them down in an environment that is unfamiliar to them. I've got a new camper with me today. Hunter is new to camping and this is our very first camp, especially in a rooftop tent. It poses a couple of challenges, so I'm going to share a couple of tips and tricks and things that you can do to camp with animals, particularly a cat and a dog, and you can apply these principles to bugging out with people or with pets or with kids or anyone who needs a little bit of extra care. I'm Clarice, welcome to the Live Ready channel. Come on your bed to get them to comply. Jimmy, look. So I'm giving Juniper a bit of a break here because she's a little camera shy. However, Hunter is easy enough for me to convince to stay on his bed where Junie doesn't sit still for that long. In this video, I just want to say special thanks to my friend Ben from Get Out Adventure for helping me film some of the clips for this video, which otherwise would not have materialized. It's a lot to have hands on two animals and to try and film something like this. So I'm really grateful for the help. And check out his Instagram page as well. He's got some really cool trips planned in the future too. So this may not be what you wanted to hear for the start of this video, but if you want to get animals comfortable with camping with you, and the same goes for people who have extra needs or need a bit of extra care, the very first thing you need to do is actually just look after yourself. If you are tired, you haven't slept well, you're dehydrated, you haven't eaten, then you become irritable and the animals pick up on your mood and on your vibe, and it makes them unsettled as well. From the start, go camping by yourself. Before you even bring animals or anybody who needs a bit of extra care into this kind of environment, because this is a beautiful wild camp that I'm out at, you need to be settled and comfortable in this kind of environment yourself. So the very first thing you do is you prepare yourself for something like this. Especially if you're preparing for bugging out or survival egress, or if there's like emergency preparation going on and you foresee that you might need to leave your home for some reason. Your oinking sounds are very funny. Were you a piggy in your previous life? Hey? Hey? Boo-boo. Yeah, ooh. You're going to end up being the alpha, the leader. So you need to ensure that everybody else is comfortable in that environment. And if you are uncomfortable, it's going to unsettle everyone else. So don't underestimate the effect that your mentality and your disposition in an environment where you're not used to being is going to have on everyone and everything else around you. The second thing that factors into getting animals more comfortable in a situation outside of your home is preparation. The more preparation you do, the more comfortable they're going to be. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you'll know that Juniper and I have been on some extreme camps in the past. So we've camped in the snow 3 or 4 times, and we've camped in hectic snowstorms before. And in the beginning, she was really unsettled by wind on the tent. So the more the tent flaps, the more noise there is, the more unsettled she becomes. And she used to meow, and she used to complain about being in the car, and just systematically getting her used to travel, first of all, and then secondly, getting her used to being in a tent, and also just getting her used to moving around in the wilderness or being outside of our home environment. It played a large role, but it took a couple of years. And a cat is more difficult than what a dog is. So Hunter has actually settled in really easily into camp life. And this is our first camp. It's not our first time in the bush, but it is our actual first camp. And in a rooftop tent with a dog who hasn't experienced that before, especially we had some high winds last night, it can be a little disconcerting to the animals. So it takes time for them to get used to it. Doing it one by one can help, except if you've got 2 animals who are used to being together and now you're trying to transition them into something like camping in a rooftop tent and you're doing it one by one, that can unsettle them a little bit more. So if you have two animals that are used to traveling together or used to being at home together, getting them to travel together might actually help them, because there's familiarity in having the other animal around. And then there are other things that you can do as well. So for example, the sheep, every night when we go to bed, Hunter gets the sheep to come with him and a blanket. So there's me, the sheep, the blanket, and the cat. If you take those things from your home and you transition them right into camp life, there are already these familiar elements that have come from home into camp life, and it makes it easier to transition between home and camp. Whatever situation you find yourself in, it's like children as well. If they have something like a routine, for example, that settles them at night, applying that routine outside of your home environment in a disaster scenario is also going to give them some sort of comfort. Do you want a treat? Come, boy. Good boy. So further to bringing familiar things from home, food, routine, beds, blankets, any toys or anything that is familiar to the animal is really welcome at camp as well. Sit. And don't forget to also apply the same rules to camp life as to home life. Good boy. So Juniper has gotten used to knowing that at a certain time of day she gets her dinner, at a certain time she gets breakfast. She generally tends to have a little bit more food in her bowl, whereas Hunter is on quite a strict diet and he gets food twice a day. So when we get to dinner time, he knows that he is going to get a certain amount of food, and bringing things like treats or so along that can actually help to settle them into their routine and just remind them that there are rules and that they need to sit before they get their dinner and they need to behave in the vehicle can be very helpful as well. So in the beginning, when I first got Hunter, it was a little tricky to get him to be settled in the car. Did achieve that with a little bit of drivels. So drivels, if you're not South African, is basically a dried meat. It can be venison or it can be beef, made into like a dried sausage. So it's quite a common South African thing to have around. And animals obviously love it as well. Even Juniper eats drivels. And I promise you can train any animal with drivels. So having things like treats around and just having them know that their food is there and it's their normal food, and that they're going to get the same amount of food is going to make things easier for them. But again, don't neglect yourself in this process. Because you are the alpha or you are the person in charge, make sure that you have things prepared for yourself as well. Measure out the amount of food that you're going to need for that period that you're at camp. So for Hunter, I've measured out every single meal. It's all gone into one container, but I can at least to very much a fraction determine how much he's going to have at each meal, and I should have a little bit of extra food left at the end. So never cut it too fine either. Don't pack exactly the amount of food that you need. Pack 1 or 2 meals extra. If you have a hard time trying to determine how much food to feed them, bring your measuring cup along, then measure out their same amount of food. In the same way that you can become dehydrated or you can get hungry and you can be like stressed, animals also feel stressed, they also get dehydrated, and they also like get hungry. So make sure that you are sensitive to their needs, and they might not have the same way of telling you that they need something. So for example, if you're at home and your dog usually when they're hungry goes and sits at their bowl and maybe squeals a bit, now you might not have a bowl in the same place, you might not have the same routine, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult for that animal to communicate to you that they are hungry or that they have some or the other need. So you have to be a little bit more in tune with your animals before you bring them out into the wilderness like this. if you're going to buy gear specifically for the outdoors, these are quite cool. These are bowls that I bought for Hunter. That are collapsible, so it makes camp life easier. I particularly like that it's got a lid, because if I've had water in it and I just throw the water out because I'm moving camp or something like that, I can easily put the lid on and it keeps the bowl dry and there isn't like leftover water that gets spilt everywhere. And because they're collapsible, they fold up easily and they stow easily and they go just absolutely anywhere. But if you're going to acquire new gear for your animal to be used at camp, try to get them used to that gear at home already. So you might have seen Hunter's bed, which looks a lot like my camping chair. I got that bed and I got him used to it before I brought him out to camp with that bed. The reason why I wanted a raised bed is because we've got a lot of ticks around, we've got snakes and things around. Not that I think that he's necessarily going to go lie down on a snake. It's just that I like him being raised the same way that I like being raised off of the ground when I'm at camp. I like him to be raised as well. But first, before bringing that new gear to camp or using it in a bug out situation, use all of these things at home so that by the time you pull out the bowl and you go, this is your water bowl or this is your food bowl, the animal is already used to that and they're quite happy to eat from whatever you've given them. Remember, when an animal is outside of their normal environment, they can also become stressed. It means that they eat less, it means that they drink less water, and it predisposes them to disease or to feeling ill or to misbehavior because they're also not feeling comfortable. So really good to get your animals used to whatever you're going to give to them to use at camp before you actually come to camp. And then in a couple of videos I've shown Juniper, she has learned that her tuna gets kept in the fridge, and she's very quickly picked up that when I say it's dinner time and I've got a specific routine, I take out the bowl, it's a glass bowl, I ping a spoon or something against it and I go, who's hungry? She knows that means her food is coming, but it also means that she started associating the fridge, the camp fridge, with her tuna bowl. So she knows that her tuna gets kept in the camp fridge. So it's quite cute to see how she goes, and at a certain time of day she'll come and sit on top of the fridge. So be sensitive to those kinds of things because animals also learn specific behavior. I think this is the water bowl's lid, which is standing outside at the moment. They learn specific behavior according to what you have previously had as a routine or as a habit, and those habits will also filter through, but it might look a little different at camp than what it does at home. I'm all for making life easy for yourself at camp. So like I said, measure out the amount of food that you're going to need. Put it in specific containers so that you know this is Hunter's food, this is Juniper's food. You can find it easily. So that when it comes to you're making fire, you're trying to cook, you're trying to make hot water for a shower at camp, because there is a lot more work that goes into maintaining a camp than your normal home. Home is comfortable. You open the faucet, water comes out. Camp, you might need to walk to the river to go fetch water. So there's a lot more that goes into maintaining a campsite than there is maintaining a normal routine at home. So don't make things difficult for yourself. Have their food ready, have it in a place that's easy to reach, have bowls that are collapsible or easy to use, have their leads ready. And in the same way that you would make them used to their food and their bowls and everything that you use at camp, also get them used to a lead at home before you bring them out into the wilderness on a lead. Oh, such a big puppy. All right, up you go. Oh, so myself, Hunter, and this, careful, that's Junie. Yes, it is. And Juniper managed to sleep quite comfortably in here last night. But it takes a bit of getting used to. Because the space is limited in here. Junie, can you report for duty? Otherwise, no food. Hello. Hello, Mal. It takes a bit of getting used to, not just because there's limited amount of space. This is Junie's kitty litter box. But also because we're now elevated from the ground. So there's a lot that goes into getting animals into and out of a rooftop tent. And there are endless amounts of gear on the market. Not just for rooftop tents, you get like cool ladder inserts and things that helps them to climb up and down by themselves. But there's also just like cool bowls, So these are Junie's bowls. They're also collapsible ones. Oh, kitty food. It smells nice. Hey, there. That's a treat for you, yeah. It's not usually allowed. Oh, Junie's food. Yeah. So I have got Juniper's litter box in here, and you would think that it would be a smelly thing to have in your tent and a really uncomfortable thing, but it's really not. So before I come out to camp, I usually just change her litter, put new litter in, and the only thing that she really uses the litter box for is to wee at like 4 o'clock in the morning, which is when I don't feel like carrying her down out of the rooftop tent. And also if I get woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I generally don't go back to sleep. So for me, it makes it a lot easier to have her litter box in here. She sorts herself out around 4, and it allows me to just sleep right through it. Doesn't matter what kind of tent I'm in, she's a lot happier if she's got a litter box and she's got some food and water. And Hunter obviously also then has the benefit of stolen food and some water. If he needs to go wee, then I've got to carry him down in the middle of the night, but he tends to be quite well organized, and he can hold whatever he's got to do until when I get up in the morning. But Junie, would actually wake me up to go out. Different animals have different needs. Obviously a dog and a cat are very different. These two have only known each other for about 2 weeks now, but they're already friends. But it's also because I've really put a whole lot of effort into getting them to be comfortable around one another. He's quite chilled at camp. She gets a little bit itchy and she wants to go for a walk every now and then. And she also tends to sleep inside the sleeping bag with me, where he will just sleep on top of me or like wherever. We had quite an interesting little wrestling match this morning. It must have been at like 4 o'clock. It was just after Junie got up. And he suddenly realized that for the first time he's sleeping in a bed with me, because usually at home he sleeps on his own bed, not on the bed or on the sofa. And suddenly he realized that he's in the same bed as me. So it was a good excuse to wrestle his mother. In my way. So this over here is her harness. I made her used to walking on a harness before I brought her out to camp, so that she is comfortable already being on a harness. If I take her out of the rooftop tent, then she has to be on a harness. I can actually let the lead go. Sometimes I just let the lead drag behind her. But if something spooks her and she runs off into the bush, you want to come back into the bed, then it is a lot easier for me to track her, because there's a lead that's leaving like a line of drag marks behind her. So it's easier for me to track her if she goes disappearing off into the bush when a lead is dragging behind her. But it's also easier for me to catch her if she is dragging a lead behind her. But yeah, make sure that you've got enough space for your animals. Make sure that they get enough rest as well. And then also just make sure that they are familiar with the things that you're bringing to camp already. So for now, I'm still lifting Hunter up and down, in and out of the tent. Juniper actually manages to climb through the roof, and then she goes on the roof rack down over the bonnet of the car, and she can get down like that by herself. She also manages to open the zips for the doors by herself if I leave the zips closed at the bottom. So I've learned to close the zips at like the top where she can't get out accidentally. And this guy over here kind of just waits for me to move him around at the moment. He is going to get much bigger, and then it might be a bit more difficult for me to get him up and down, but there are some really cool products on the market to help to get your pets into and out of the rooftop tent. Junie's growling because you've got your head on her. Okay, to get him into and out of the rooftop tent, I've just got to have some really secure footing and a really secure grip on him to make sure that there is absolutely no way, even if he squirms, I'm not going to drop him. But I've had plenty of exercise with the cat. You can bring all the bedding down with you if you like. There we go. Good boy. So there's a lot to be said for animal health as well. When you're out at camp, the same rules that apply for being at home. If you usually go walk your dog every day at home, make sure that you still implement that at camp. They are going to get a lot more exercise at camp because you're out in the bush or whatever. It's a lot of extra stimuli, so consider that they might get tired quicker and they might need more rest than usual. Even if it doesn't look like that, it's going to be a question of what is the animal's actual needs, what do they usually need at home, and bring that along to camp as well. So don't neglect medication, don't neglect exercise, don't neglect water. All of those things are still or even more important when you're outside of your normal home environment. Hunt, whose ball is this? Hey, whose ball is this? Whose ball is this? Hey? Yeah. So implement some playtime as well. Make sure that you actually enjoy having your animals around with you. If you're in the bush, even if it's a leisure camp, or if it's bugging out, or if there's some or the other circumstance that has moved you outside of your normal environment, maybe you're traveling or something like that, make sure that you still spend time with them. Remember, they are dependent on you. And that's not just for physical needs, it's also for emotional needs. So they actually do need love and care and exercise and their normal things that they need for their well-being at camp and at home. So for example, the temperature fluctuations that you get in different kinds of environments, where I've been in the Karoo with Juniper on a really, really hot day, I've taken, and it goes back to the principles of thermodynamics. When you are in a survival situation, if you're overheating, putting something that is wet on you is immediately going to encourage heat exchange. So for an animal like Hunter, for example, who's got quite a thick fur coat, and Juniper as well, in really hot environments, they can overheat very quickly. And you'll start to see it in the animal. They'll pant, they'll search for water, they'll stick to the shade. You'll start to pick up in their behavior that they are overheating. Wetting them, doesn't matter with what. If you've got a bit of extra water, if you've got a river nearby, go and have a swim with them, get them wet. It'll absolutely help them to cool down. And the same goes for dogs or cats who don't have particularly thick fur coats. You'd think most cats do, but not all of them do. When they get really cold, you must also take care to ensure that they stay warm. So Junie and I like to go camping in the snow. When we do, I either have an electric blanket going, a hot water bottle. She has pajamas as well that I put on her, because I can see when she starts getting cold. She'll constantly be trying to get onto my lap. She'll constantly seek out heat sources. If I've got my laptop going at home and she goes and sits behind my laptop where it's blowing out hot air, especially if it's working really hard at that moment, I can tell that she's cold. So I need to make a plan to ensure that she stays warm enough. She's generally quite good at that. She'll come and sleep on top of me, or she's even learned how to sleep in a sleeping bag with me. So she literally worms herself down my back, then turns right up, and she's got her head at the top on like the pillow as well. And then what she'll do is she'll sleep back to back with me like a little sausage. It's quite cute. He is quite comfortable just sleeping out, and then if he does get cold, he'll just snuggle up to me a little bit more. But generally, you'll see in the behavior of the animals if they really need like a temperature change or a little bit of care with temperature or something. It takes quite a bit of work getting animals to get used to one another. If this feels like an insurmountable task to you, maybe you've got a dog who's a rescue who you didn't have from puppy time, who you now have to get used to a cat. I promise you, it's absolutely possible. Just hang in there. I've done it before. I used to house sit for a neighbor who his dog was taught to hate cats, and I managed to get Juniper and all of the dogs to get along with one another. So it's absolutely possible, but it takes work and it takes patience, and eventually they will actually become friends. And like I said, if it feels like an insurmountable task, go and read Job, especially Job 41 verse 1 to 2. God is basically saying there that to you it's impossible, but to me it's not. And it just encourages us to continue to try. And you're not trying to do this alone. Nothing that you do is alone or by yourself. And just ask God for guidance as well. He'll definitely help you in whatever you're facing, whether it's teaching two animals to get along or something bigger than that. Hey, Mel, you're very cute. If you found value here, remember to hit like and subscribe. Follow me on social media. I post more of the everyday Live Ready stuff on Instagram, and you will find both Hunter and Juniper on there as well. Until the next time, Live Ready. Come here, report for duty, mouse.
Yes, you're so sweet.
But here's a sheep. Look, 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 look. There's a sheep. You have to work for your food. Okay, you look at the camera over there.